Welcome to Buddhism Seeds. Thousands of years ago, Zen masters quietly pointed to a truth most of us still forget. Peace is not found in distant places. It doesn't hide in deep forests or within the sound of temple bells. It lives right here, in this breath, in every beat of your heart. Before we begin, you may share where you're listening from, or simply feel your surroundings. The cool air, the warmth of your blanket, the faint light in your room. Let everything be just as it is. Tonight, you will hear stories that have crossed centuries. Zen tales passed from teacher to student, generation to generation, in the quietest moments of the human soul. These stories are not meant to be understood, but remembered. Like a gentle mirror, they reflect what you've always known, but may have forgotten in the rush of life. You don't need to analyze or memorize anything. Just listen with the heart that breathes within you. Let your body rest where it is supported. Let your breath find its natural rhythm. These words will soak into you like rain into the earth, no resistance, no grasping. Some stories will touch you deeply. Others may simply pass through, yet each will plant a small seed of awakening within you. No searching, no striving. Only presence, like a still lake that doesn't try to be calm, but becomes calm when the wind rests. Now close your eyes and take a deep breath. Tonight, we will step together into a journey of stories, where stillness is not the destination, but the home you never left. Morning in the Cheyenne Valley. Mist hung thick, spreading over the ground like the sky's own breath. Dew gathered on moss-covered stones, glimmering faintly in the dim light of dawn. The sound of a stream echoed through the rocks, deep and steady, like an ancient chant the earth had never forgotten. On the stone ledge beside the stream sat Daiki, motionless, his hands clasped his knees, shoulders tense, his young face lined with quiet exhaustion. For many days he had tried to find stillness. Each morning he meditated for hours, keeping his breath, even struggling to empty his thoughts. But the harder he tried, the more restless his mind became. The more he sought peace, the further it drifted like mist melting under the sun. A question began to burn softly inside him, like a small flame in the night. If meditation means letting go, why does it feel like I'm holding on? If peace truly exists, why does it grow distant the harder I seek it? Before sunrise, his master Shinzen appeared. He stood in the fog, calm and grounded, as if the forest itself breathed through him. The master looked at Daiki and said simply, "Daiki, come with me to the stream." Only 4 words, yet they opened a door. The voice wasn't a command, but an invitation to step into a different kind of journey, where answers were not found in thought, but in each step, each breath, each drop of water moving through life. Daiki rose and followed. The stones beneath his feet were cold and damp. Mist still covered the forest, light still dim. Yet within him something stirred, as if dawn had begun not in the sky but in his own heart. The path wound through pine trees, their scent mixing with the damp earth and the faint songs of waking birds. With each step, the crackle of dry leaves echoed softly, syncing with the slow rhythm of nature's breath, deep calm, unhurried. When they reached the stream, Shinzen stopped. Before them lay a large rock dividing the water. The stream flowed around it, rejoining on the other side, moving on as if untroubled. The master watched the flow, then turned and asked, "What do you see, Daiki?" "I see water flowing around the rock, master." Shinzen nodded. "Yes, Life flows around your mind just the same. The words fell into Daiki's heart like a pebble touching water, silent, yet spreading ripples far and wide. He watched the stream, no struggle, no resistance, just flow as light as breath. The master sat beside him, eyes half closed, voice calm and resonant, like the water itself, speaking. "What has caused your suffering?" Daiki bowed his head. "I try to practice sincerely, but the harder I try, the more tangled my mind becomes. I long for peace, but the more I want it, the less I feel it. I'm like this stream always striking the rocks, unable to find my way." Shinzen smiled gently. The water does not suffer because of the rock, Daiki. It simply flows around beyond and onward. You suffer because you resist what is natural. Daiki was silent. But if I stop trying, will I not fail to progress? Shinsen picked up a pebble and tossed it into the stream. Ripples spread, then vanished. "What do you see?" The ripples disappeared. "No," said the master softly. "They didn't disappear, they returned to being water. Your mind is the same. When it stops stirring, it returns to its true nature, clear and still, as it has always been." For the first time, Daiki felt a quiet space open inside him, wordless, formless, yet gentle, like still water after the wind. The next morning, Shinzen brought him again to the stream. Sunlight pierced through the trees, scattering across the surface of the water. Today, the master said, "Touch the water." Daiki dipped his hand into the stream. The cold water slipped through his fingers, impossible to hold. "How does it feel?" "It passes through, I can't keep it." The master smiled. "Just like thoughts and emotions. The more you grasp, the more you lose. Only when you let go can the water cool your hand." In that moment, Daiki understood he had never truly sought peace. He had been trying to possess it, but peace cannot be achieved. It can only be lived with. That night, heavy rain fell. The next morning, the stream roared fiercely, churning around the same rock that stood unmoved and firm. "What do you see today?" asked Shinsen. "The water is stronger than before, but the rock remains unchanged." "Then can you be the rock?" Daiki smiled faintly. "No, master. If I were the rock, I'd be rigid. Can you be the water? If I were water, I'd be swept away." The master's eyes softened. A practitioner chooses neither rock nor water. You must learn both stillness within strength and flow within movement. When you understand, you'll see they are not two. Rock was once water, and water will become rock. All forms are temporary, the essence never lost. Daiki looked again. The stream flowed, the rock stood. Yet now he saw no separation, only transformation happening every moment in the water, the stone, and in himself. A ray of sunlight struck the surface, turning it to glass. He saw his reflection no longer tense or searching, just a faint, quiet smile. Shinzen nodded. "Now you understand, don't you?" "Yes, Master," Daiki whispered. "When I stop trying to become someone, I return to who I've always been." The master smiled, warm as the morning light. And that, Daiki, is where meditation truly begins. The teaching was not spoken. It was alive, woven through every image before them. Water flowing, rock standing, leaves falling, clouds dissolving, all revealing the same truth, though few ever listen. Daiki realized that water was the symbol of mind fluid, soft, finding its way through all things without resistance. Stone symbolized essence, steady, unmoving, beyond birth and death. What seemed opposite were expressions of the same emptiness, shunyata, the space where all forms arise and fade, without losing their true nature. He saw now that his practice had been driven by the desire to become enlightened. Yet that very self-wanting enlightenment was the stone blocking his own stream. One evening, as sunset bathed the stream in gold, Daiki watched leaves drift by, effortless, unafraid. He understood peace doesn't come when we struggle to be calm, but when we no longer need to try. Behind him, Shinzen's voice floated like wind through the trees. When you stop searching, you will see everything has been here all along. The words rang like a bell within, needing no explanation. Only silence. Only listening. From then on, Daiki lived differently. Each morning, he still sat by the stream mist curling through the pines, not to find peace, but to hear. When birds sang, he listened. When wind passed, he felt. When water flowed, he saw. No line remained between meditation and life. Everything was the Dharma, breathing, living, shifting moment by moment. Someone once asked him the secret of meditation. Daiki smiled. Let your mind flow like water, not blocking, not forcing, not seeking direction. When the mind stops fighting, peace arises by itself. He realized then that his master's greatest lesson was never in words, but in presence. Shinzen taught not by speech, but by being each gesture, each glance, a teaching without explanation. Meditation, Daiki saw, was not a technique, but a way of being, to know you are breathing, to know you are alive in this moment. From that stream, he learned when the mind no longer struggles for stillness, stillness appears. When we stop seeking to see, everything becomes clear. And in the endless sound of flowing water, he heard his own nature, silent, transparent, and free. That autumn, Daiki returned to the same stream, no longer a restless student, but one who had come home. The water mirrored the pale sky. Golden leaves fell and drifted away. He picked up a small stone, cool and rough, in his palm and released it into the stream. The sound it made was soft, round, tender, like a farewell. Not to learn more, but to say thank you. He knew that time would smooth the stone just as life's collisions smooth the heart. Every hardship, every ache was life's way of teaching gentleness. Across the water, Shinzen stood silently, his reflection stretching long in the current. His voice came like wind over the valley. Daiki. When water meets stone, water doesn't resent the stone, and the stone doesn't fear the water. They simply are. Daiki bowed. I understand now, Master. When the mind no longer wishes to be different, it becomes the very peace it once sought. The Master smiled, eyes kind as the last light of autumn. And when you see that truth in the water, you'll see it everywhere in your steps, your words, your way of living. The stream still flowed, yet all sound seemed to dissolve into silence. In that moment, Daiki realized peace was never a destination. It wasn't in the future, nor anywhere far away. It had always been here, in every breath, every step, every drop of water, quietly flowing around the stone. The next morning, as Daiki walked down to the stream, he saw a middle-aged man drawing water with a wooden bucket. Every movement was slow, deliberate, full of presence, as if each drop were a sacred act. The water mirrored the sky, still as glass. Daiki paused and smiled. The stream that had once taught him now flowed onward through another person, into another story. When the sun had yet to crest the hilltops, morning mist still clung to the low wooden roofs of the village. The distant crow of a rooster merged with the soft, tolling of temple bells echoing over the dew-soaked fields, carrying with it the chill of dawn and the faint scent of smoke drifting from kitchen fires in that quiet hour. Gentaro. A man in his 50s stepped silently out of his house. He wore a worn cotton robe and carried a wooden bucket weathered by years of use. Every morning, for as long as anyone could remember, he walked the same path to the old well in the village center. No one knew why. They only saw him draw water, pour it into a clay jar, then sit beside the well for a while before returning home. One day a villager asked curiously, "Why do you do this every morning?" Gentaro smiled softly. "I'm drawing up silence," he said. The answer puzzled everyone. How could fetching water bring silence? But for Gentaro, it was more than a task. It was a ritual of mindfulness, a way to return to the present moment. The sound of the bucket touching water, the dripping of droplets, the wind rustling the dry leaves around the well. All of it was a sermon of the morning. One early autumn day when yellow leaves had begun to gather around the well, a young monk named Yugji came to see him. He had heard of Gentaro. The villagers called him the monk without a temple, a man who lived a simple yet strangely peaceful life. Yugji bowed deeply. "Sir," he said, "I've practiced meditation for years, but my mind is still restless. I've studied the sutras, yet my heart remains clouded. People say you've found a way to meditate within daily life. Please show me how." Gentaro looked at him, smiling kindly. "Then come with me to the well." He turned and walked slowly but firmly, each step like an unwritten verse of a wordless scripture. Yugji followed. With every footstep, the distant sound of water echoed faintly, and somehow peace began to settle within him, as if the narrow path to the well led not only through the village but into the center of his own heart. The well stood old and still, like an ancient Zen master who had long attained enlightenment. Moss covered its stone rim. The rope was frayed and damp from the morning mist. Gentaro approached, tied the rope carefully, and lowered the wooden bucket into the darkness below. The rope rasped softly, mingling with the gentle sound of water touching wood steady, and even like the deep breath of the earth. When he drew it up, the bucket overflowed with crystal clear water, reflecting the pale sky of dawn. Everything moved so slowly, it seemed time itself had stopped. No wasted gesture, no audible breath. Gentaro did not hurry, did not strain, did not think beyond what he was doing. His movements blended seamlessly with the rhythm of morning. Yugji watched, growing more bewildered by the moment. There was no lecture, no cushion, no incense or bells, just a man drawing water surrounded by a silence that felt alive. "What do you see?" Gentaro asked, his voice as deep as the water below. "I see you drawing water," Yugji replied. "Only that, yes, only drawing water." Gentaro smiled. "If that's all you see, you'll only see water. But if you look deeper, you'll see yourself reflected in it." Yugji leaned over the well. His reflection wavered, distorted, shifting, appearing, and fading with every ripple. "Do you see how your reflection is distorted?" Gentaro asked. "Yes, because the water is still moving." "Exactly," he said. "The well cannot reflect the sky while the surface is disturbed, nor can your mind reflect its true nature while it stirred by the effort to see. The words dropped into Yugji's heart like a pebble into deep water, quiet but reaching the bottom. He froze. For years he had meditated to attain stillness, forcing his mind to stop. Yet in that instant, he understood. Stillness is not the result of effort, but what remains when effort ends. The next morning, Gentaro led him to the well again. The air was clearer. Light filtered through fallen leaves, casting golden patterns on the surface of the water. Gentaro handed him the bucket. "Today," he said, "you draw." Yugji obeyed carefully. The rope trembled softly, wood knocked gently against stone, and the bucket rose full of water, glittering like crystal. As he poured it into the jar, his hands shook, and a few drops spilled onto the ground. Gentaro said nothing. He only watched his gaze as kind as the first morning they met. "How do you feel?" he asked. "My hands shook and some water was lost." Gentaro nodded. "That's all right. Look closer, see how the earth is drinking those drops. In this universe, nothing is wasted. Only the mind divides thinking of loss and gain. When you fetch water and see only what's spilled, you look with a selfish heart. But when you see that even the ground thirsts, you've begun to meditate." Yugji looked down. The droplets were sinking into the soil, leaving soft, dark stains. He suddenly saw that every small act carried the breath of all existence. When the mind no longer separates self from world, gain from loss, even the act of drawing water becomes a meditation. From that morning on, Yugji quietly accompanied Gentaro to the well. They rarely spoke. Gentaro continued his ritual, each motion slow and steady, as if he and the well had long understood one another. Sometimes he simply gazed at the sky mirrored in the water. Other times he listened to the dripping sound of water filling the jar, a simple rhythm yet deep like the heartbeat of time. One misty morning, Yugji asked, "Why don't you chant or pray while fetching water?" Gentaro smiled gently, eyes still resting on the clear surface. "Because every act done with full presence is a prayer. When you are truly here, you are already in the Dharma." The words sank into Yugji's heart through the sounds of wind, water, and earth. He began to realize that meditation was not confined to temples or postures. Meditation was the state of being fully present in whatever one is doing, even drawing water, sweeping the yard, or taking a single mindful breath. Many seekers came to monasteries begging to be taught how to sit properly, breathe correctly, or chant the right way. But they forgot that living itself is the deepest meditation. Not every practice needs a ritual. Every breath, every movement of the hand when done in awareness is a sacred act of life. Gentaro bent down, drew another bucket, and lifted it before Yugji. "Do you see how clear it is?" "Yes, very clear." "And why is it clear?" "Because it hasn't been stirred." Gentaro nodded. "Exactly. When your mind stops being clouded by judgment, comparison, or striving, you'll see it has always been clear. You don't need to make the mind bright, just stop making it muddy." A soft breeze passed by, carrying a few fallen leaves onto the surface. Gentaro didn't remove them. He simply watched. "Why don't you take them out?" Yugji asked. "They'll drift away when the wind changes," he replied. "Just like your emotions, no need to force or chase them away. When you're still enough, everything returns to its natural order." Yugji bowed his head. He said nothing, but inside him, something quietly illuminated a stillness not born of effort, but arising naturally like water settling after movement. Day after day, Yugji continued coming to the well. But now, he no longer fetched water to understand or achieve anything. Each time he lowered the bucket, he felt he was touching something deeper than water. It was presence itself. He no longer hurried. He simply watched the bucket sink, heard the rope rub against the stone, felt the coolness spread through his hand as he drew it up. The morning light shimmered on the surface as if smiling. The breeze brushed his hair, carrying the earthy scent of moss and soil. Everything around him seemed vivid and alive, not because it had changed, but because he was finally there. One morning, before the sun had risen high, Gentaro looked over and asked, "Have you found what you were seeking?" Yugji replied softly, "I no longer seek. I've realized what I was looking for has always been here, within what I'm doing." Gentaro nodded, eyes bright and calm. "That is meditation." They sat beside the well in silence. There was nothing more to say. The sound of water dripping into the jar echoed steadily like the breath of the earth, effortless and free. From then on, Yugji understood meditation is not about leaving the world, but living within it, with a mind that is not swept away. Meditation is not found in the posture of sitting, kneeling, or chanting, but in being wholly present with whatever you are doing. Whether fetching water, sweeping the yard, or cooking when the mind rests in the present, every act becomes dharma. Time passed, and Yugji eventually left the village to return to the monastery. Yet the image of the old well and the man drawing water remained within him, a silent sutra. When he saw new students meditating with tense faces, he simply smiled and said, "Go to the well, draw some water. When you can watch the water fill the jar and your mind is nowhere else, you'll understand what I mean." In that moment, Yugji knew what Gentaro had truly passed on was not a technique, but a way of being, where every drop of water, every breath, is a doorway to stillness. Years later, after Gentaro had long left the village, people still noticed that each morning someone would come to the well, sit for a long time, and gaze into its depth. No one spoke, but everyone felt it. The presence of Gentaro still there, in every drop of water, in every gentle breath of wind. One night, Yugji returned to the old village. The full moon shone over the well. The water glowed like a mirror. He saw his reflection clearer than ever before. No distortion, no flicker. Then Gentaro's words from long ago echoed in his heart. When you are fully present, the water within you becomes a mirror. Yugji closed his eyes and pressed his palms together. From the deepest place in his heart, he understood meditation does not lie in what you do, but how you do it. And in that moment, the old well was no longer just a well, it had become a mirror reflecting the entire universe within. The wind stirred. The small lantern by the village hut flickered. Its soft yellow flame trembled, then slowly went out. Yet just before fading, it burned brighter, warm, pure, and serene, as if smiling. Yugji watched it and remembered the words of another teacher, Rento. Do you see how just before it dies, the flame shines the most beautifully? He understood then, impermanence takes nothing away, it only reveals the beauty of each fleeting moment. That night, wind from the pine forest behind the small hermitage drifted through the cracks in the door, carrying the faint scent of resin mixed with the cold mist of evening. Outside, the moon had not yet risen. The entire meditation hut was wrapped in gentle darkness. Only a single paper lantern hanging under the eaves cast a dim, trembling light like the shallow breath of someone about to depart. Kyo. The young disciple who lived in the hermitage quietly stepped out onto the porch. She saw the lantern flickering, its small flame shrinking little by little as if about to die. Fearing that the darkness would fill the hut and her master would not see his way, Kyo hurried inside to fetch a new lamp. Just as she lit the fresh oil, its blue flame flaring briefly, Master Rento stepped outside. He said nothing at first. He simply stood there, watching the old flame still trembling in the wind. It was small, yet brighter than it had ever been. Then, in a voice soft as mist, he said, "Do you see, Kyo? Just before it fades, the flame shines its brightest." Kyo bowed her head, not fully understanding. A quiet doubt crossed her mind. If the light is about to die, how can it be beautiful? The master looked out toward the garden where the night was slowly swallowing the faint outlines of trees. He spoke again slowly. The flame knows it is about to end, so it gives everything it has left to shine. So too with human life, only when the heart truly knows. Impermanence does it live each breath completely. Kyo stood still. She felt something deep and warm in his words, as though another flame had been lit inside her, one that no wind could extinguish, because it did not burn in the lamp, but in awareness itself. From that moment on, she no longer saw the lantern merely as a source of light, but as a reminder that every flame glows most beautifully in the instant it knows it is about to fade, just as we awaken only when we recognize impermanence. The next day, it rained. The fine drops fell evenly on the old tiled roof, creating a slow, steady rhythm, like the breathing of the earth. Kyo swept the courtyard, her hands trembling from the cold, yet her heart grew warm with the memory of the night before. She kept thinking about her master's words. The dying flame burns brightest. Inside the meditation hall, Master Rento sat in silence, eyes gently closed beside the old lantern half burned. Kyo approached quietly and said, "Master, I still don't quite understand. Why is the dying flame the most beautiful?" He opened his eyes and looked at the lantern. The pale golden light flickered softly, fragile yet tender. He asked, "When you know the flame is about to go out, how do you look at it?" Kyo replied, "I look closely, because I'm afraid it will disappear." The master smiled. "That's exactly what I mean, Kyo. It's because you know it will end that you truly see it. Impermanence teaches us to cherish each passing moment. If you believed the flame would burn forever, you would never pause to look." His words fell into the stillness like a drop of water into a deep pond, sending quiet ripples through the air. Kyo said nothing. She simply felt something within her dissolve gently like rain sinking into the earth. The master continued, "Life is the same. Because it is brief, every moment becomes precious. Those who fear impermanence run from it. Those who understand it learn to treasure presence." That night they sat together with cups of warm tea. A new paper lantern was lit. The wind slipped through the cracks of the door. The flame bent, slightly wavered, then steadied itself again. "Do you see?" Rento said. "The lantern doesn't fight the wind. It leans. And in that leaning, it stays alight. That's how we live within impermanence, by yielding and returning without clinging." Kyo gazed at the flame for a long time. For the first time, she saw that within fragility, there was a kind of peace, the peace of one who no longer fears impermanence. The next morning, mist covered the valley in white. Moisture clung to the pine branches, and the first light of dawn drifted across the eaves like a soft ribbon. Kyo stepped outside and saw her master sitting patiently replacing the wick of the old lantern with a new one. His movements were slow and mindful, as if he were meditating. The lantern was not yet lit yet somehow. Where he sat, there was already light. "Master," she said softly, "I still feel afraid when I see something coming to an end, even if it's only a flame or someone I love." Rento looked up, his eyes kind and clear like a calm autumn lake. "It's natural to fear loss, Kyo," he said gently, "but attachment is what brings suffering. You cannot keep a flame burning forever, but you can keep the light it once gave alive in your heart." He pointed toward the yard where drops of dew sparkled on the grass. "Do you see that dew? When it disappears, it doesn't vanish. It returns to the clouds, the streams, the rain. Everything returns." Kyo followed his gaze. A tiny drop, clear as crystal, melted away under the rising sun. And in that instant, she understood to dissolve is not to be lost, but to return in another form, lighter, freer. The master smiled, his voice warm and deep. Impermanence isn't meant to frighten us, but to awaken us. When you live knowing that everything changes, you love more deeply, listen more carefully, and let go more easily. The breeze carried the scent of pine and damp earth. In the morning light, Kyo saw that everything, the lamp, the dew, her breath, was quietly returning to where it belonged. She realized the dying lantern wasn't sad at all. It was beautiful in its fading, because that beauty didn't belong to the light itself, but to the one who saw. The next night, Kyo sat alone on the porch with only the small lantern for company. Its trembling light cast her shadow on the old wall. Each time the wind passed, the flame flickered, and this time she no longer feared it might go out. Instead, she smiled, feeling her heart as still as a pond after rain. The lantern's glow began to weaken. The oil was nearly gone. The wick curled inward, trembling. Yet Kyo did not rush to replace it. She sat quietly, watching the flame contract and then flare once more, bright, pure, like a final breath, filled with awareness. In that moment, she understood her master's teaching. Before it fades, the flame shines brightest. So too with life. When something nears its end, a season, a bond, a lifetime, if we are still enough to witness it, we see a kind of beauty that clinging once blinded us to the beauty of full presence of a moment aware of its own passing, yet radiant still. She whispered, "Light never truly dies, it simply returns to where it came from." As her words faded, the flame went out and darkness filled the porch. But within Kyo, another lantern had been lit, one that needed no wick, no oil, burning with understanding and peace. From then on, whenever someone came to the hermitage burdened by loss, she would simply smile and say, "Look at the lantern as it goes out, for even in its final moment, it shines brightly." Outside, the wind from the pine forest passed again, carrying the scent of dew and rustling leaves. In the vast darkness, an invisible light still burned within the heart that knows how to see and how to let go. Like the fading of a lantern, impermanence reveals the value of the present. When we know everything will change, we stop wasting time fearing loss and begin to look deeply into the beauty that is already here. For it is only in the moment, before something ends, that we truly learn how to live completely. Years later, Kyo became the caretaker of the hermitage. She continued to light the lantern each evening, not to chase away darkness, but to remind herself of impermanence. When a lantern burned out, she no longer hurried to replace it. She simply watched the fading light dissolve into night, while the brightness within her heart remained. One winter night, when snow covered the courtyard, she looked at the lantern swaying in the wind and remembered her master's words. Smiling softly, she whispered, "Master, I understand now. Light doesn't die. It only changes form." Outside, the sun began to rise. The first light of dawn streamed through the mountain gap, spilling across the roof and her face. The lantern in her hands became unnecessary because the whole world was glowing, and in that moment, Kyo realized enlightenment is not far away. It's here in the very first breath of morning, when you still know you are alive. It was still dark when Tenzo gently woke Kenji. The wind slipped through the old roof tiles, carrying the chill of late winter. In the dim light, the small oil lamp in the master's hand cast a faint yellow glow, flickering against the wall. Outside, the entire valley was wrapped in white mist. Only the soft murmur of a stream in the forest and the sound of footsteps brushing against gravel could be heard. Kenji slowly opened his eyes, feeling the cold creeping through his fingers. He was puzzled why had his master woken him so early. For years of study, Kenji had been a diligent and devoted student, constantly seeking answers to life's deepest questions. What is enlightenment? What is peace? Where is the true path? He read sutras, practiced meditation, and carefully recorded every word of his teacher. Yet in his heart, it always felt as though a thin layer of mist blurred everything, as if truth remained just beyond reach. "Master, where are we going?" Kenji asked softly when he saw Tenzo carrying a pouch of tea and the small oil lamp. The master turned with a gentle smile, his voice quiet like wind through the forest. "To the mountain to watch the sunrise." "You've seen it before, haven't you?" Kenji nodded. "Many times, but never with you." Then today, Tenzo said we'll see it again, but differently this time. Kenji stayed silent. He didn't understand yet. There was something in his teacher's tone that felt unusual, as if this morning wasn't only about watching the sunrise, but seeing something far deeper. As they stepped beyond the temple gate, the fog swallowed everything. Only the small lamp ahead lit their path. Inside, Kenji felt a question rising that he couldn't name. Why would the master choose something so ordinary, just a sunrise, to teach about meditation? He didn't yet realize that sometimes the real light isn't found in what we search for, but in how we see as it slowly emerges from the dark. The mountain path wound steeply upward. The stones were damp and slippery, the scent of wet soil mixed with the chill of dawn. Wind swept through the old trees, making them rustle like quiet whispers of the forest. Tenzo walked ahead, calm and steady, each step deliberate. Kenji followed, his breathing heavy, sweat forming under his robe, irritation beginning to stir in his chest. He thought, if this is a lesson, why must we climb a mountain? Why not teach in the warm meditation hall where it's quiet and still? Halfway up the slope, the master stopped. The cold wind blew, making the lamp flame tremble. Tenzo turned and asked, "Do you hear anything?" Kenji listened. Only the wind whistling through the rocks and the rustling of dry leaves. "Nothing, Master." Tenzo smiled softly. "That's it. You're always listening for something worth hearing, and so you miss what's already here. When your ears stop searching, you'll hear even the silence." The words passed through Kenji's mind like a gentle breeze. He said nothing more, just walked on, feeling the crunch of gravel underfoot, the rhythm of his own breath, and the quiet between gusts of wind. As they neared the summit, the sky began to lighten. Below, clouds stretched thick like a white sea so vast it was impossible to tell earth from sky. The master set down the tea pouch, poured water from a small flask. The rising steam mingled with the fog floating in thin ribbons through the air. "We'll wait for the sun," Tenzo said. Kenji sat beside him, his heart still full of unanswered questions. But when the master said nothing, offering no explanation, no sermon, and simply gazed eastward, time itself seemed to slow. Then suddenly, a thin golden line pierced through the sea of clouds. The first light of dawn spread across the rocks, soft, deep, and warm. "Master, the sun is rising," Kenji whispered. Tenzo nodded, his tone calm and low. "Yes, and it waits for no one. Truth is the same, it's always present. We're the ones who arrive late." Kenji was still. After all his years searching for enlightenment, he had never seen the sunrise like this, not as scenery, but as truth revealing itself. The master continued, "See how this light shines for no one in particular. It reaches stone, grass, people, all things without distinction. Like the awakened mind, it illuminates everything equally. The more you seek, the farther it seems. Only when you stop, you realize it has always been here." The morning air was still cold, yet, as the sunlight touched his skin, Kenji felt a strange warmth. He lifted his hand, watching the trembling light dance across his fingertips, soft, alive, almost breathing. For the first time in his life, Kenji felt no urge to ask another question. Not because he understood everything, but because he no longer needed to understand with his mind. Tenzo took out a small pouch of tea, poured hot water into 2 cups. Steam rose, blending with the fog, dissolving into the morning air. He handed a cup to Kenji, his voice gentle. "Drink. Each warmth teaches impermanence, just like the sun. It's beautiful only because we know it will set." Kenji took a sip. The taste was bitter on his tongue, then slowly turned sweet warmth, spreading through his chest. Tenzo smiled. "That is the taste of mindfulness. When you are fully present, even bitterness becomes dharma. When you are absent, even sweetness becomes illusion." Kenji looked down into the valley. The mist was thinning, revealing the small temple, the winding stream, the garden he had walked through every day. Everything was the same as before, only his seeing had changed. Tenzo's voice deepened clear as the morning light. "All your life you've been searching for a place called enlightenment. But it's like standing under the open sky asking, 'Where is the sun?' Enlightenment isn't in the future, or in scriptures, or at the end of a road. It's here in your breath, in the cup you hold, in the light, breaking through clouds, and in the very act of seeing." Kenji sat quietly. In that moment, his mind became clear like a still lake without ripples. There was nothing more to search for because everything was already here, whole, simple, and radiant as the rising sun. When light filled the mountaintop, the master stood. He said softly, "Now sit and look at the sun with a mind that gives it no name." Kenji obeyed. At first, thoughts still flickered, ideas about the path, about understanding, about whether he had awakened or not. But one by one they dissolved. All questions quieted, leaving only breath, heartbeat, and sunlight. There was no longer one who sees, only seeing itself. Time passed unnoticed. When the sun had climbed high, Tenzo said, "Do you see? When the mind is still, there is no division between you and light. Just as when you breathe, you cannot say which breath is yours and which belongs to the sky. Between the breather and the air, there is only life, no boundary." Kenji bowed his head. Inside, something quietly broke, not pain, but the illusion that he had to become someone in order to be at peace. Like the sun, which never tries to prove it, shines. It simply shines. The master smiled gently. "You climbed the mountain to find light, but it has been with you since the first step. You just hadn't noticed." As they descended, the old path seemed new. Leaves still fell, streams still flowed, but in each small movement, Kenji saw life unfolding. The bird song, the wind through bamboo, all became wordless sutras. From that day on, Kenji never asked, "Where is enlightenment?" again. He simply learned to see each thing as it was, without adding, without naming. And in each ordinary breath, he knew he was home. Enlightenment isn't far away. It lives within the first breath of dawn. Like the morning sun, it makes no promises. It simply shines. When we stop seeking, stop analyzing, stop striving to be right, we realize we've been within its light all along. When they returned to the temple, Tenzo set the tea pouch on the table and said softly, "We've come back, but in truth, we never left. The mountain isn't outside us, and dawn doesn't live only on the peak. It's in every morning you open your eyes, in every moment you know you're alive. Kenji bowed deeply. Master, I understand now. Enlightenment isn't arriving somewhere new, it's returning to where I've never left. Tenzo nodded, eyes filled with compassion. When you learn to see the sunrise with a mind free of wanting everything in life, becomes your own sun. Outside wind passed through the bamboo grove, whispering like a distant bell. Kenji looked up and asked, Master, why does the bell ring only once? Tenzo smiled, gazing into the distance. Because what matters isn't the sound, but the silence that follows. Just like life, the lesson isn't in the noise, but in the stillness it leaves behind. The morning was still young. Mist drifted gently over the bamboo grove behind the temple. The first birds of dawn sang softly through the cool air, their voices fragile, like the whisper of a world just waking. Inside the meditation hall, small candles flickered. Trails of incense smoke curled upward, dissolving into the pale light of morning. Maru, the youngest novice in the temple, had been assigned to ring the morning bell. For him, it was a simple joy. The bell's sound was the first thing everyone heard at the start of a new day. Each time he lifted the mallet, Maru felt as if he were waking not only the temple, but the whole sleeping world. Yet that morning he noticed something unusual. When Master Zenji lifted the mallet, he struck the bell only once. A single tone rose deep and resonant like a drop of water falling into a still lake, then slowly faded into silence. Maru found it strange, for when it was his turn, he always struck 3 times. To be clear, he thought, so everyone can hear. After meditation, he approached his teacher timidly. Master, why did you strike the bell only once? I'm afraid people far away won't hear it. Zenji looked toward the bamboo grove, where the first rays of sunlight were filtering through. His voice was low and calm. Did you hear the bell just now? Yes, clearly. And after it stopped, what did you hear? Maru paused, then whispered, Nothing. Only silence. The master smiled, eyes gentle like the morning mist. That is what I wanted you to hear. The sound of the bell is only the doorway. The silence that follows, that is the path. Maru bowed his head. He began to understand that what's most worth hearing is not in the sound itself, but in the stillness between 2 echoes, the place where the mind can truly touch peace. From that day, Maru became more attentive. Each morning he came to the meditation hall early, sitting quietly waiting for Master Zenji's bell. When the sound arose, it spread through the air, clear, deep, and pure, then faded like mist over water. Maru listened until the sound was gone, realizing that even in silence there were other sounds, the faint wind outside the leaves brushing together the rhythm of his breath and the beating of his own heart. One morning he said, Master, I think I understand. After the bell fades, there is silence, but within that silence there are other sounds. Zenji nodded, his gaze calm as still water. Good. But there is something more. Can you hear the silence within the sound itself? Maru blinked. Silence within the sound, yes. The master smiled. When you strike the bell, the tone rises and fades, but within those vibrations are countless tiny pauses, so brief the ear cannot catch them. That is where stillness lives. If you hear only the sound, you know half the truth. But if you can hear the stillness inside the sound, you see the whole. Maru pondered this for a long time. That night, when the temple was quiet, he went alone to the meditation hall. Moonlight streamed through the window, falling across the old bronze bell. He took a deep breath, lifted the mallet, and struck gently. One single tone rang out, rippling through the air like waves on water. He listened, waited, but all he heard was the bell fading into silence. A flicker of disappointment touched his heart. The next morning he went to his teacher. "Master, I tried, but I could only hear the bell, not the silence within it." Zenji didn't answer immediately. He looked at the candle burning on the table, its flame trembling slightly, and asked, "How do you listen with my ears, Master?" He shook his head. "No, listen with your whole body." "My whole body?" Maru asked in surprise. "When your mind is still, your body becomes the bell," Zenji said softly. "Then you are no longer the listener. You are the sound itself." In that moment, there's no separation between sound and silence. There is only presence, pure and boundless. Maru stood silently. The teacher's words sank deep within him. He realized that meditation was not about listening with the ears, but allowing both body and mind to become transparent, to let the world move through without resistance. Then every sound is not merely a noise, but life itself breathing, where sound and stillness meet with no border between them. The next morning, Zenji took Maru to the temple garden where the wind often played through the bamboo. The breeze whispered gently through the leaves, a soft rustling like the voice of impermanence. The master asked, "What do you hear?" "The wind and the bamboo," Maru answered. Zenji smiled. "In truth, the wind has no sound, and the bamboo has no sound. Only when they meet does sound arise. So too, with silence and sound, they exist because of each other. Without silence, how could you recognize sound? Without sound, how would you know there is silence?" Maru froze. The words struck something deep within. He saw that everything in life worked the same way joy and sorrow gain, and loss, birth, and death none existed alone. They were two faces of one living flow, reflecting and sustaining one another. Zenji continued, voice as soft as wind. "Most people chase only the noise, what's loud, bright, and praised. But a practitioner must learn to hear the silence between the echoes. There you will find the true nature, formless, wordless, soundless." Maru looked at the bamboo grove. The wind still blew, but now he no longer heard just the sound of bamboo. He sensed the space between the gusts, each rustle, each breath of earth alive, not because of sound, but because stillness was shining through it. A dry leaf fell, landing softly on the ground like the last breath of dawn. Maru watched and understood. Just as the bell's sound dissolves into air, nothing truly disappears. Sound returns to silence as all beginnings return to the still source. Zenji looked at him, eyes knowing. "You see, Maru," he said, "sound is not the opposite of silence. It is silence speaking in another form." Maru bowed. A quiet smile appeared on his lips. For the first time, he heard not just the wind, but the silence singing within it. And he knew he had truly heard the Dharma. The next morning was clear, the air fresh after a night's rain. Maru was once again asked to ring the morning bell. He entered the meditation hall, bowed to the old bronze bell as if greeting a silent teacher. Breathing deeply, he raised the mallet gently. Then a single strike. The sound was round, pure, and radiant, stretching like a golden thread across space. Maru did not lower the mallet immediately. He stood still, listening, not just with his ears, but with his breath, his skin, the pulse within his chest. The bell's tone thinned like smoke until it vanished. Yet in that instant of disappearance, he realized everything was still ringing. The trees, the air, the earth, the sky all vibrating together. The whole temple was breathing, and within him, a stillness so deep arose that all boundaries between inside and outside self and world dissolved. From afar, Zenji watched quietly. He said nothing, only smiled the smile of one who knows his disciple has truly heard the teaching. For now, Maru no longer heard merely the silence after the sound, but himself within that silence. Even after the final echo faded, Maru remained standing. The first light of morning touched his face, and for a moment he seemed to dissolve into the dawn itself. There was no one striking, no bell, only pure presence, resonating in the form of silence. From that day, Maru never struck the bell 3 times again. He struck only once, but that one tone was deep as the ocean. Those who heard it felt their hearts grow still, as if returning to something they had long forgotten. The bell no longer just awakened the morning. It awakened the quiet within each listener, where peace had always been simply waiting to be noticed. Sound and silence rely on each other, like inhaling and exhaling. When we hear only the sound, we see half the truth. When we also hear the silence, we see the whole, where sound, stillness, and self merge into one. Years later, Maru became the temple's chief bell keeper. Each time the bell rang, people would say, "There is something in that sound that makes the heart fall still." One morning, a young novice asked Brother Maru, "Why do you strike only once?" "Is it because Master Zenji did the same?" Maru smiled. "Not exactly imitation. But when you truly hear the silence after the bell, you know there's no need to strike again." He looked toward the mountains. Sunlight pierced through the clouds, glimmering on the snowy peaks. In that moment, Maru heard another sound, the faint melting of ice, soft as breath. He remembered his master's words. Sound and silence depend on each other like the breath in and out. When you can listen to both, you have heard the wholeness of life. A gentle smile appeared on Maru's lips. The bell's echo had faded, yet within him, another sound continued, the sound of silence. And from the distant mountains, the melting water had already become a stream. That winter snow fell so heavily that the entire valley seemed swallowed by silence. Every sound grew distant, only the whisper of wind sliding across white rooftops and the faint crunch of footsteps sinking into deep snow remained. At the foot of the mountain, the lake was frozen smooth like a silver mirror, reflecting a pale sky and bare trees, asleep in winter's stillness. Riku, a young man studying meditation, sat by the frozen lake each morning, quiet as a snow shadow in the white landscape. His breath vanished into the cold air, so thin it was almost invisible. Looking down at the clear ice, he saw his faint reflection and wondered again, why does my heart still feel so heavy? Why, even after meditation and chanting, does this sadness not dissolve? The question echoed within him, steady as a low hum beneath the frozen surface, soft but unyielding. He realized that while the lake appeared calm, water still moved below silently and without pause. So too with his own mind, seemingly still yet deep beneath sorrow and old wounds, continued to flow unseen. In that moment, Riku felt a chill, not only from the wind, but from the loneliness inside himself. He began to understand some silences are not peace, but sorrow that has never been faced. And to truly be still, he would have to touch that inner current, the one that still moved beneath the frozen surface of his heart. One morning, when fog still blanketed the lake, Riku saw an old Zen master walking slowly along the snow-covered shore. Each step left a deep print and a soft crunch, the small sound somehow breaking the vast silence of dawn. Riku stood and bowed deeply. "Master," he said, his voice trembling in the cold. "I've sat by this lake for weeks, but my heart still feels frozen. I try to meditate to be calm, but I can't find peace." The master didn't answer at once. He looked at the frozen surface, then bent down and gently tapped the ice with his staff. A clear, crystalline sound rang out, sharp, cold, and fading into the open air. "Do you hear that?" the master asked. "Yes," Riku said softly. "A faint tone." "Then nothing." The master smiled gently. "Even ice can sing, Riku, but it only sings when something touches it. The same is true for your mind. Silence does not always mean peace. Sometimes it only means it has frozen over." Riku was stunned. He looked at his reflection in the ice, still but rigid, bright but cold. In that instant, he understood that all this time, he had been trying to make his mind not move, instead of truly listening to it. He had mistaken stillness for suppression and peace for forgetting. The master struck the ice again. This time, the sound traveled farther, rippling like circles across the frozen lake. "Do you hear?" he said. The sound fades quickly, but it leaves a lingering vibration in the air. That is how your mind works. When touched by mindfulness, it softens on its own. No forcing, no struggle. Riku bowed low. The master's words seemed to melt something within him. A gentle wind passed, carrying a subtle warmth. He suddenly saw that his pain didn't come from the ice itself, but from fearing its melting. And when he allowed it to melt, the water would flow again, and the heart would soften. At that moment, he could hear the song of the ice, not just from the lake, but from within himself. The master sat down beside him. Amid the whiteness of winter, his voice rose deep and warm like the hidden water moving beneath the ice. "You see, Riku, when winter comes, the lake appears dead, but beneath the frozen layer, water still flows, nourishing life throughout the valley. Your emotions are the same. They never disappear. They are simply covered by fear, guilt, and resistance. When you hide inside silence to escape pain, you only freeze that inner current." He paused, eyes gazing toward the horizon. Riku listened in stillness, each word sinking like drops of water into the earth of his heart. Mindfulness, the master continued, is not forcing yourself to be calm. It is daring to look beneath the ice. When you look with full presence, you allow sunlight to reach it. And when the light is warm enough, the ice melts naturally. No pushing, no hurry. Riku looked down at the lake. For the first time, the ice no longer frightened him. It shimmered under the rising sun, pale gold, fragile yet bright enough to reflect the whole sky. The master pointed toward it and smiled. Don't try to melt the ice, Riku. Simply be with it. Acceptance is the strongest warmth. Every emotion is like water. Solid, liquid, or vapor, its essence is the same. Once you see that you'll never fear your feelings again, Riku listened, and his chest began to loosen. The sunlight danced across the frozen lake as if it too were beginning to thaw. In that moment, he realized that peace wasn't the absence of ice. It was the warmth to smile as it melts. In the days that followed, Riku no longer meditated to reach stillness. He simply sat with the ice with his breath, like greeting an old friend after a long separation. The cold wind still cut through his skin, but he didn't shrink away. He just breathed deeply, letting it pass through him and dissolve into the air. Each breath was no longer a struggle between endurance and avoidance, but a gentle act of acceptance. The sun rose higher each day, shining through thin clouds like winter's curtain, slowly closing. Tiny cracks began to form across the lake, fine as strands of hair, yet enough to let the light in. When the rays touched, the water glimmered beneath, alive and clear, as though life itself were smiling. Riku saw his reflection there also cracking, but no longer afraid. He understood now that his mind didn't need to break the ice or force peace. It only needed the light of awareness to touch it, and everything would soften naturally. In life, too, there was no need to run from sadness, anger, or loneliness. When he allowed them to be held gently in compassion and quiet observation, they found their own way back to flow. One late winter morning, as the ice broke apart in thin sheets, the master returned to the lake. He watched the golden shimmer on the water and said softly, "Do you see, Riku? When the lake thaws, it needs no wind, no force, only sunlight. That same sun exists within you. It is acceptance. Each time you stop judging and stop trying to be different, that inner sun begins to shine." Riku bowed quietly. The reflected light shimmered in his eyes like water rising. For the first time, he felt warmth from within, not because winter was ending, but because he had stopped trying to change himself. Peace, he realized, does not come from melting the ice, but from allowing it to melt in its own time by the warmth of the heart. In that silence, Riku knew he had been healed not by teachings or doctrines, but by the simple truth he had seen for himself. The light had never been outside. It had always lived in the deepest current of his own mind. The warmth of acceptance is the deepest healing. When the mind stops resisting itself, the ice melts and the water returns. Spring arrived. The lake was clear again, reflecting drifting clouds. Riku still sat there, but now he waited for nothing. He simply listened to the sound of water dripping from the last fragments of ice, the sound of letting go. The master stood beside him and said gently, "Like this water, your mind has returned to its natural flow. You can let it reflect the sky or rest in stillness. But remember, they are one and the same. A spring breeze passed, carrying the scent of wet earth and new leaves. In that moment, Riku understood what once caused him pain had become the path to learning how to love himself. The master looked toward the distant mountains, still capped with a touch of white, and spoke slowly. One day, when you reach the island of stillness, you'll see all the roles you've played, all the layers of ice you've carried, were only mist dissolving over the sea. Then you'll stop searching for your true self in any form or identity. You'll see that the ego is only vapor and awareness, the vast, endless ocean. Riku gazed at his teacher, knowing the journey was far from over. Amid the wide expanse, the sound of melting water mingled with the wind like an invitation toward a new kind of peace. Amid a distant sea where fog wrapped the horizon year-round and the sound of waves merged with the wind like an ancient chant, there was a small island, isolated, silent, seemingly forgotten by time. It was there that Ayame was sent after many years of practice, still unable to find true peace within. Before she left, she knelt before Master Soren and asked, "Master, how long must I stay there?" Soren looked at her, his eyes deep as the bottomless sea. "Until the day you no longer ask that question," he replied. From that day, Ayame went to the island alone. No voices, no schedule, no one to speak to, nothing to rely on. Each morning, she awoke with the sound of waves, watching the fog dissolve slowly over the ocean, realizing the world needed no one to control it, to keep breathing. Each night she listened to the wind sweeping past the cliffs, the tireless rhythm of waves striking the shore, a continuous wordless prayer. Day after day, Ayame began to notice something she had never seen before when there was no role left to cling to. No monk, no seeker, no student. The question, "Who am I?" no longer demanded an answer. It simply dissolved into the silence between two waves. In the place she thought she would be most alone, she discovered the deepest kind of life, quiet, vast, and beyond all names. But during her first days, Ayame still clung to old habits: morning meditation, afternoon chanting, evening journaling. She followed her routine faithfully, believing that discipline itself could bring calm. Yet surrounded by endless waves, something in her began to break apart. No one read her writings. No one listened to her chants. No one was there to see her diligence or progress. She started spending long hours sitting on the rocky shore, staring at the gray sea, asking herself, "If no one sees me, am I still a good person? If there's no one left to please, do I still have value?" These questions clung to her for days, like the salt wind carving through the mind. At night, she heard the sea pounding against the cliffs again and again, as though the ocean itself was asking in return, "When no one is left to reflect, will you dare to see yourself?" One afternoon, as she sat on the sand, Ayame saw a small crab slowly crawling out of its old shell. The cracked shell opened to reveal a soft, trembling body translucent under the sunlight. The sight left her motionless. In that instant, she realized something years of training had not revealed: nakedness. Exposure is what humans fear the most. Like that crab she had worn countless shells, titles, knowledge, memories, even old wounds mistaken as me. She understood now that she had confused the shell for the core, form for essence. If she never dared to step out of those protective layers, she would never know what she truly was. From that day, Ayami stopped writing her journal. She no longer chanted aloud or counted her meditation hours. She simply sat still, listening to the waves strike the rocks and fade away. Within that rhythm, she began to feel a new kind of freedom, not born of effort or control, but from letting go of everything she had once called herself. And for the first time on the deserted island, Ayami felt truly alive. One morning, the fog was so thick that the sea and sky became one. There was no horizon, no line to mark where anything began or ended. Ayame sat on her usual stone back, straight hands relaxed. The waves pulsed like the heartbeat of the world. She inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly. But this time she no longer tried to keep the mind calm. She simply sat, letting the breath come and go like the tide. With each breath, she quietly realized it was the self that wanted control, that wanted stillness, that kept her from peace. Each layer of effort dissolved like fog carried off by the wind. Amid the waves, she remembered Master Soren's words. The ego is like morning mist over the sea. It appears when light touches it and vanishes when awareness becomes complete. Now she understood. Every time the thought arose, I'm meditating well, I'm more enlightened than yesterday, it vanished instantly like vapor in sunlight. The less she tried, the more naturally her breath flowed, the clearer her mind became. In that moment, Ayami was no longer the one meditating. There was no someone observing something. There was only the sea, only the breath, only pure presence aware of itself. A soft breeze passed, carrying the scent of salt and the glow of early light. Ayami opened her eyes to the boundless horizon, and a gentle smile rose within her. Not because she had achieved anything, but because she had stopped searching. Peace, she realized, had never been far away. It had simply waited for her to stop trying to see. She had always been within it. In the days that followed, Ayami lived as simply as the sea's breath. She cooked when hungry, rested, when tired, meditated, when her heart grew still. Everything moved slowly. No structure, no goal. Every small act, washing bowls, lighting the fire, gathering leaves, became a silent meditation. There was no longer a boundary between practice and life, between meditation and living. Each moment was an invitation to be fully present. She came to see that meditation was not in posture or ritual, but in attitude. It wasn't about how long she sat, but whether she was truly awake to what she was doing. She no longer counted breaths or forced mindfulness. Presence had become as natural as waves meeting the shore, steady, effortless. One noon, while drawing water from the stone well, Ayame accidentally dropped her wooden ladle. A soft plop echoed into the deep well, followed by a long silence. She leaned over and saw her reflection trembling on the surface, distorted, blurred by sunlight and ripples. In that moment, she understood the person she had been trying to become. The good monk, the worthy one, the respected practitioner, was only a reflection, not her true being. From that day on, whenever old thoughts arose, I should be this, I must do that, she simply smiled. Not out of dismissal, but because she knew now the ego doesn't need to be destroyed. It only needs to be seen as illusion. When the mind stops trying to become someone, it naturally returns to its true state, whole, effortless, unbroken. And in that return, serenity spread like invisible fragrance light, pure, ungraspable. When all roles fall away, the true self does not appear as a new me, but as the ocean vast, still, without edges. The ego is morning mist. When the light of awareness shines upon it, it dissolves not lost, but returned to the infinite sea. Months passed. When Master Soren's boat finally returned to the island, he saw Ayame sitting on the shore, gazing at the sea. Her hair tangled in the wind, her face serene and clear. "What have you learned here?" he asked. Ayame looked at him and said softly, "I no longer try to learn anything. I only see that I am not separate from the sea. I am part of the great breath that moves through all things." The master nodded. "Then you understand. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the place where sound no longer disturbs you." As they left the island, Ayame turned back. The morning mist lay thick over the water, and within it she seemed to see countless forms dissolving roles, names, fears, desires, all melting into the ocean, leaving only one thing behind: pure, nameless awareness. The wind carried the faint sound of a distant bell. Ayame closed her eyes, listening, as the tone faded into stillness, like the sea's final farewell. In that moment, she understood more deeply than ever. The ego is but mist. Awareness is the vast ocean. Master Soren stood on the deck smiling. He knew Ayame's journey had not ended. It had just begun, the journey of returning to the infinite within herself. The wind rose again, and from afar another sound drifted through the air, the soft notes of Izan's flute mingling with the breath of the sea. At dawn, deep in the valley, the Zen monastery lay wrapped in a thick veil of silver mist. The morning bell echoed across the bamboo groves, blending with the gentle murmur of the stream winding through the garden. In that tranquil stillness, a flute began to play, soft, halting, as though the player were still searching for the rhythm of his own breath. The player was Ro, a young disciple of Master Izan. Ro was diligent and sincere, yet beneath his devotion lived a quiet perfectionism. He wanted everything to be flawless: his posture in meditation, his mindful steps, even the notes that emerged from the bamboo flute he cherished like a sacred object. Every morning after practice, Ro would go to the old pine by the stream where dew still clung to the leaves to practice his flute. He had trained for years, yet every note he played still sounded heavy and dull, lacking the airy lightness that lived in his master's music. Izan's flute was different, not merely sound, but breath, wind, the voice of the mountains themselves, clear, effortless, leaving no trace behind. One morning after playing, Ro placed his flute down and approached his teacher, eyes filled with fatigue and yearning. "Master," he said softly, "I've practiced for years, but my flute still sounds heavy and unclear. I follow your method, count the beats like you do, control my breath as you taught me. Yet it's never the same. Why can't I play as you do?" Izan gazed at him for a long moment, his eyes kind yet deep. like seeing through the morning fog itself. Then he smiled faintly and said, "Tomorrow bring your flute. I will take you up the hill." Ro bowed, though his heart was full of questions. How could a hill help his flute sound more pure? Yet there was something in the teacher's calm presence that eased his doubt. As the mist lifted and the first rays of the sun appeared, Ro somehow knew the climb tomorrow would not only be about music, but about breath and spirit. The next morning they set out while the valley was still veiled in mist. The path was steep and damp with dew awakening Ro's feet at each step. The wind grew stronger as they ascended, bending the grass in rolling waves of green beneath the rising sun. The air was bright alive as if everything around them was breathing together. Izan sat on a large stone, placed the flute across his knees and said, "Play." Ro nodded, took a deep breath, closed his eyes and began. But just as the sound arose, a gust of wind swept across the hill, scattering his notes, breaking them apart into thin, trembling fragments. He tried to steady his breath, control the rhythm, adjust his angle. Yet the more he tried, the more the sound collapsed, as if the wind itself were mocking him. Sweat formed on his brow. Frustration quietly filled his chest. "Master," he sighed, "the wind is too strong. I can't play." Izan said nothing. He only smiled gently, taking the flute from Ro's hands. He didn't lift it to his lips. He simply held it still between his palms, letting the wind pass through its small holes. A moment later, faint tones began to emerge, uneven, unstructured, imperfect, yet soft, deep, and strangely alive. Ro watched in astonishment. The wind was the same, the flute was the same, only the one holding it was different. Izan spoke, his voice calm and warm. "You see, when you try to make the flute obey your will, you block the wind. But when you let the wind pass through, music happens by itself. It's the same with meditation. When you try to force your mind to be still, you only create more waves. But when you let the mind simply be, breath becomes natural, feelings flow freely, and peace appears on its own." Ro sat silently watching the grass sway. A gentle ease entered his heart. He realized that what had held him back wasn't the wind, it was his own need for control. In those imperfect notes, he heard something clearer than all his practice, the sound of letting go. The wind rose again, lifting the edge of Master Izan's robe, turning it into a golden ribbon against the deep blue sky. Ro sat quietly watching the blades of grass bend and rise, listening to the whistle of the wind through stones and leaves, each sound unique yet all alive, natural, untouched. Everything seemed to be speaking one language, the language of freedom. Izan looked toward the distant mountains, his voice soft but resonant. "Do you know why the flute can sing beautifully? Because it is empty inside. If it were solid, no sound could pass through. People are the same. When the mind is filled with expectations, comparisons, and desires, the music of life cannot move through it." He paused, eyes fixed on the drifting clouds. A practitioner often falls into the trap of wanting to be good, wanting to meditate deeper, practice better, awaken faster. But all that wanting is the echo of the ego. The harder you try to be perfect, the further you move from truth. Enlightenment is not becoming an ideal. It's the end of trying to become anything at all. Ro bowed his head. Memories flooded back, long nights of forcing stillness, long hours chasing his teacher's composure. All that striving he now saw had been the very turbulence he was trying to escape. Izan placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, his voice light as the breeze through bamboo. "You don't need to be like me. The wind plays a different song through every flute. Each person is an instrument of their own. Just be empty and the wind will sing." The words rang within Ro like a bell fading into stillness. He closed his eyes, listening to the wind moving across the hills through the leaves, through his own chest. And in that moment, he heard the deepest sound of all silence singing. The next morning, Ro brought his bamboo flute to the stream. Water rippled softly over moss-covered stones, glimmering in the early sun like tiny mirrors. This time, he made no preparations, no warm-up, no breath, counting, no rhythm in mind. He simply sat quietly listening. The sound of water, of birds on the bamboo tops, of wind through the trees, all blended into an invisible song that needed no conductor. After a while, a breeze rose, and Ro lifted the flute to his lips. The first note came, not perfect, not smooth, but true. The sound mingled with the wind, with the pulse of the earth. Each breath that passed through the flute felt like an invitation to the wind, free, effortless. Ro smiled. He no longer cared about the wrong notes or flawless tones. He let everything unfold on its own. When breath came, he played. When it left, he stopped. The melody rose and fell, strong, soft, vibrant, still, just like life itself. He realized meditation wasn't the effort to hold the mind still, but the release of the effort to hold. Peace was not the reward for perfection, but the result of complete acceptance. He stopped playing and sat in silence, listening to the sound dissolve into space. Within that quiet, something opened light, spacious like a long-closed door finally touched by wind. From that day, Ro no longer practiced to improve. He played only when his heart wished to, only when the wind called. And strangely, people passing by would pause to listen. The sound was simple, unadorned, no longer heavy with technique, but alive, as if the wind itself were singing through him. Then Ro understood the music no longer belonged to him. It was the breath of the universe borrowing his lips to sing. When the wish for perfection is released, nature sings through us. The emptier the heart, the clearer the way. The wind never learns to blow. It simply flows where it is not blocked. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Ro played again. Izan watched from afar, saying nothing. When the final note faded, he approached and asked, "Does it feel different?" Now Ro nodded. "Yes, master. I no longer play to be praised. I just listen to the wind and let it pass through me." Izan smiled gently. "Then you understand. A practitioner is like the flute empty so that the Dharma can flow through. The more you try to create sound, the more you cover the sound that already is. When you release the need for perfection, the universe sings through you." Ro bowed deeply. In that moment, there was no longer master or student, only the wind, the flute, and the stillness holding them both. As they descended the hill, the sun had already set. The last light shimmered on the bamboo tops like a thin thread connecting heaven and earth. Izan turned to him, and said softly, "Tomorrow you will meet Kenzo and Hana. They are learning to embrace both the light and the shadow within themselves. Remember, just as the sun and moon keep the universe in balance, one must accept the whole of oneself, both the bright and the unlit parts. Only then does true freedom appear." The evening wind passed through again, carrying a gentle sound, as if the flute was still playing even though no one held it. Afternoon in the monastery garden. Sunlight slanted through the trees, casting long leaf shadows over the damp, quiet earth. The bell from the main hall echoed faintly through the bamboo grove, blending with the gentle murmur of the wind, a sound soft and ancient, like a forgotten prayer. Hana, a young student, sat still on the stone steps, her eyes reflecting the fading gold of the sun. For days, her mind had been tangled like threads. Though she continued to meditate and chant diligently, two opposing streams kept rising within her, one seeking purity and calm, and the other stirred by anger, doubt, and fear she could not understand. When she saw Kenzo, the old Zen master of the temple, walking slowly through the garden, she stood bowed and said softly, "Master, I am tired of myself. I want to be kind, but inside me, there are still dark things. The harder I try to drive them away, the more exhausted I become. Why do I have these two sides that never seem to agree?" Kenzo stopped before her. His eyes were gentle yet deep, as if they could see what she hadn't dared to speak. The breeze brushed the edge of his brown robe, carrying with it the faint scent of young bamboo. He asked in a voice quiet as running water, "If one day the sun grew angry because it couldn't shine at night, what do you think would happen?" Hana looked up, startled. The question pierced through the mist in her mind. She couldn't answer, only felt an inner space, open wide, calm and clear, as if something hidden within her darkness was about to be illuminated. Kenzo stepped closer and sat beneath an ancient tree. The last light of day filtered through the leaves, scattering pale gold across his shoulders. His voice was low, slow, as though telling a story remembered through lifetimes. Long ago, when the world was still young, the sun and the moon did not yet understand their roles. The sun was brilliant, proud of its light that reached everywhere. It believed only it could bring life, that darkness was a mistake to be erased. The moon was gentler. It loved the night, the stillness of water, the songs of insects, and the quiet loneliness of the world in sleep. It only wished to listen, to be present, shining just enough not to wake anyone. Kenzo smiled faintly, his gaze distant. One day the sun said to the moon, "You are too weak. Your light is only a reflection of mine. Why don't you shine brighter and end the night altogether?" The moon replied softly, "Do you not see, if night disappeared, all beings would lose their place of rest? If light never stopped, who would see the stars?" But the sun did not understand. It continued to burn without pause until its brightness scorched the flowers, dried the fields, and forced all living things to hide in shadow. Only then did it realize light has meaning only because darkness exists beside it. Kenzo paused for a long time. He looked up at the sky, turning to dusk, half still glowing, half dimmed by clouds. His voice was calm and deep. "Do you see, Hana, light and darkness are not enemies. They work together to keep the world in harmony. So it is within you what you call good and bad, gentle and angry, are just two breaths of the same mind. Do not try to drive the darkness away. See it clearly with the light of understanding. Then both will merge, and you will see peace was never gone. Hana was silent. In her mind, the image of the sun and moon flickered, one radiant, one tranquil. She saw they were never competing, only balancing the world together. Her voice trembled like a leaf in wind master. Then, the darker part of me, should it also be kept? Kenzo looked at her with no judgment, no praise, only understanding. He nodded slowly. Nothing needs to be erased. What matters is that you see it. When you deny it, the dark part becomes a hidden shadow that quietly controls you. But when you look at it without fear, it becomes your teacher, the one who helps you understand yourself. He bent down and picked up a yellow leaf that had just fallen. The evening breeze lifted it and let it fall again like the rhythm of a breath. "Do you see this leaf?" he asked, holding it up in the fading light. One side faces the sun, the other touches the earth. If we see only one side, the leaf loses its life. It is the same within you. Gentleness and fierceness are both forms of energy. When you embrace them equally, they transform. Anger becomes courage. Fragility becomes compassion. Only by knowing your darkness can you truly understand your light. Wind rose, swirling fallen leaves around them. The leaf in Kenzo's hand turned once, then drifted down softly, resting on the ground, as if its journey were complete. The teacher watched it, his voice steady amid the sound of distant bells. The Buddha did not teach us to be without darkness, but to see the light within it. Hana bowed her head. Tears fell, yet a smile touched her lips. For the first time, she no longer wanted to push away what she once called bad. She simply wanted to sit like the sun, accepting the night like a leaf, accepting both its sides. And in that moment, she felt understood not by anyone else, but by the quiet light rising from within. In the days that followed, Hana continued her meditation as before, but no longer forced her mind to be calm. When anger arose, she gently noticed, this is anger arising. When kindness appeared, she smiled. This is compassion present. She saw both in the same light, without judgment, without resistance. Each morning, she still cleaned the meditation hall, but her movements were different now, slower, more aware of her breath, feeling the breeze on her face, hearing the broom against the floor like the whisper of the earth. She no longer sought purity in her work. She saw that the work itself was meditation. One evening, as the first moonlight entered through the window, Hana paused. On the floor, two rays of light crossed, one from the moon outside, one from the oil lamp within. They intertwined so completely that it was impossible to tell which was which. She stood still, feeling her heart illuminated the same way, warm and cool, bright and gentle at once. She understood then peace is not found by eliminating what we dislike, but by seeing everything without resistance. Like light and shadow, they need not fight, only coexist. That night, when Hana shared this with Kenzo, he simply smiled, eyes calm as a still lake. You have seen the sun and the moon within yourself, he said softly. When those two stop competing, the universe inside you moves in harmony. From that day when Hana sat in meditation, she no longer sought clarity nor avoided darkness. She simply sat, letting both exist like day joining night, like breath entering and leaving. And within that stillness, she realized peace was never a reward for effort. It was a gift for those who accept themselves completely. One autumn morning, Kenzo and Hana walked to the stream. The sun had just risen, golden light rippling on the water. High above the moon still lingered faintly at the horizon, as if reluctant to leave. Kenzo looked at the scene and said quietly, "Do you see the sun and the moon are both here, neither overpowering the other? Your mind is the same when light and darkness can exist together. That is true freedom." Hana bowed, smiling. She realized that all these years she had never lacked light, only kindness toward herself. As they walked back to the temple, the wind carried the scent of incense and dry leaves. On the path, Kenzo said, "One day you'll learn another truth, that letting go is also part of wisdom. When a tree knows it has enough, its leaves fall on their own. When your heart understands enough, what's no longer needed will quietly fall away." Hana listened, her heart calm and clear. She looked up at the sky where the sun now shone, and the moon faded into morning, not gone, only transformed. That autumn, the forest surrounding the Zen monastery burned with color gold, amber, and rust like a slow-moving fire across the valley. Each gust of wind sent the leaves falling in soft showers as if time itself were dissolving. Mika sat by the veranda, her eyes following a small leaf that spun gently through the air before landing in perfect stillness. Her chest tightened not because of the leaf, but because of a vague sadness she could not name. Mika had been living in the monastery for several months. Her days were steady meditation at dawn, chanting at dusk, bowing to the Buddha each evening. Yet the longer she practiced, the more she realized her heart was not at peace. Beneath her calm exterior lingered a quiet fear of loss, of change, of the inevitable fading of all things beautiful. Every autumn that fear grew stronger, as if every falling leaf whispered a reminder of separation. One afternoon, as leaves filled the courtyard, she went to see Master Sojun, the old Zen teacher with kind eyes and a slight frame. Sitting beside him, her voice trembled. "Master, I hate autumn. It makes me feel empty. Trees lose their leaves, people drift apart. Everything beautiful seems to leave me." Sojun didn't answer right away. He watched the wind carry the falling leaves, then smiled softly. His voice was so gentle it almost blended with the air. "Have you ever seen a tree cry when its leaves fall?" Mika froze. The question was simple, yet it echoed through her heart like a bell. She looked again at the bare branches before her, and for the first time saw that they stood quietly, unresentful, unafraid. The wind passed through them, whispering impermanence. Yet in her teacher's eyes, she glimpsed something else, that letting go was not loss, but a form of return. In the days that followed, Mika began to observe everything around her with new eyes. Each morning she sat beneath the great trees in the forest, watching the wind tremble through the leaves. One by one, the golden leaves detached, spinning gently before resting on the earth. For the first time, she noticed the trees did not cling, nor grieve, nor regret. They simply allowed what was meant to leave as part of the rhythm of life itself. One morning, while sweeping the temple grounds, she found a small branch still holding a few stubborn leaves. She turned it gently in her hand and asked, "Master, these leaves are still holding on. Do they know they'll soon have to fall?" Sojin looked at her kindly and replied, "Leaves do not think, but the tree knows. When the tree is ready, the leaves fall. When life is ready, what must go will go. Only humans suffer because they believe they have lost something." His words moved through her like the wind through the bamboo. She thought of her own life, all the things she had tried to keep a memory, a person, a dream. Even when she knew they had already passed, she clung to them out of fear of emptiness. Each time something slipped away, it felt as though a part of her disappeared with it. But that day when she looked at the bare trees, Mika understood the tree did not grow smaller. When its leaves fell, it grew lighter. It lost nothing. It was simply preparing for the next season for new buds to come. Perhaps humans were the same. Each act of letting go was not an ending, but the beginning of another form of peace. One evening, Sojin led Mika into the forest. The last light of day slanted across the trunks, casting a soft golden haze like the breath of time. They walked slowly over a carpet of fading leaves, listening to the wind's ancient murmurs. Stopping by an old tree, Sojin pointed to its bare branches. "Do you see? When the tree was young, it feared losing its leaves, but as it grew, it learned that falling leaves are natural. Nothing is truly lost. Everything is transformation." He bent down, picked up a brown leaf resting among the moss, and held it gently in both hands as if it were precious. "This leaf is not dead," he said. "It's returning to the earth. From the soil it will feed the roots, and one day it will rise again as sap for spring. If the tree tried to hold on, it would dry up and die. The same is true for you. If your heart clings to the past, there will be no space for the present to take root." His words sank into her like rain seeping through dry soil. Mika stood silently, feeling something within her soften, an old frost melting beneath the warmth of understanding. Sojin continued, his voice low and steady. "The Buddha taught impermanence not to frighten us, but to help us love more completely. When you truly see that everything will pass, you can finally be fully present while it's here. When you learn to let go, you don't lose anything. You simply stop resisting the truth." Mika bowed her head. Tears fell quietly at the tree's roots, soaking into the earth like the first rain washing away dust. She wasn't crying from pain, but from release, the relief of no longer needing to hold on. Memories, people, seasons, all of it suddenly felt weightless, like leaves falling in their rightful time. In that moment, she saw that letting go was not loss, but a return to the natural flow of life. From that day, she no longer avoided autumn. Each morning, when dew still clung to the leaves and the wind stirred softly through the forest, Mika sat beneath the same old tree. She watched the leaves fall and felt an unfamiliar peace. No fear of separation, no urge to grasp. When the wind passed, she whispered, "Thank you." When the leaves touched the ground, She smiled as if witnessing a sacred ceremony of renewal. One morning, she saw Master Sojin sweeping the courtyard and asked, "Master, how do I know when it's time to let go?" He paused, pointing to a nearby tree where a few last leaves trembled in the wind. "The tree does not ask the wind when to blow," he said. "It only listens. When the leaf has aged, its stem thins, and a single breeze is enough. Your heart is the same when it is ripe. What no longer belongs will fall away on its own. You don't have to force it." Mika thought for a moment, then asked, "Does letting go mean I stop loving?" Sojin smiled, his eyes warm and deep. "No, letting go means loving without owning, loving without tightening your grip. When you understand that everything in life is only borrowed for a time, you love more deeply but more gently. Letting go is not coldness. It is compassion guided by wisdom." Those words echoed in her like a long, resonant bell. She no longer tried to harden her heart or fear pain. She now understood that letting go wasn't abandonment. It was making space for life to continue light as a falling leaf, yet carrying the promise of spring. By the end of autumn, the forest stood bare. But in that emptiness, Mika saw a new kind of beauty light streaming through the branches, touching the soil, where tiny green shoots were already beginning to rise. She turned to Sojin and said, "Before I only saw the leaves falling. Now I see the sprouts growing." Sojin nodded. "That is how all things return. When one thing ends, another begins. If you only stare at what's gone, you'll never see what's being born. When the heart knows it has enough, it releases. And when it releases, it opens to a new season." She bowed with her palms together. Inside there was no struggle left, only gratitude. On the walk back, the wind rose again, rustling the dry leaves beneath their feet. Sojin looked at her and said softly, "Tomorrow, help Isamu with the garden. He's learning to pull weeds, but hasn't yet seen that this too is practice. Weeds in the soil are like habits in the mind. If you don't look closely, they return quickly." Mika smiled. She understood now that every small task in the monastery, sweeping, planting, gathering leaves, was another lesson in disguise. The evening wind carried the scent of earth and incense. The last leaves drifted down, light, unregretful. And in that moment, Mika saw clearly letting go was never an ending. It was the sign that the heart had understood enough. Letting go was wisdom, not loss. When the heart knows enough, the leaf falls. When the person knows enough, suffering fades. At dawn, a soft white mist draped over the garden behind the temple like a thin veil. The sound of birds mingled with the ringing of the morning bell from the main hall, creating a stillness that was both peaceful and alive, as if the whole world were breathing in the slow rhythm of meditation. In that tranquil scene, Teo, the youngest novice in the monastery, was crouched down with a small hoe in his hands. He had been assigned to work in the garden with Master Isamu, a tall monk with a calm presence, as steady and kind as the mountain behind the temple. Teo was full of enthusiasm, but also impatience. He always wanted to see results immediately, to see seeds sprout right after planting, flowers bloom right after watering, and his mind become peaceful after just one meditation. His questions always began with the same words. When will the tree grow? When will the flower bloom? When will I find peace? That morning, while Teo was busily pulling weeds, Master Isamu looked over and said gently, "Do you notice, Teo? The faster you pull the weeds, the faster they seem to grow back." Teo looked up, frowning at the green shoots that had returned where he had cleared them just yesterday. "I don't understand, Master. I pulled them out by the roots." The master simply smiled and said nothing more. He bent down and continued to pull each small weed slowly, almost meditatively. His hands moved lightly, as if speaking to the earth, the wind and the quiet life beneath the moss. Watching him, Teo sensed something different. A rhythm not racing against time, but moving with it. His restlessness softened as though an answer was beginning to take root in the silence. Yet days passed, and the answer had not fully appeared. Teo kept working in the garden, but grew restless. The task felt monotonous, only soil weeds and drops of sweat falling onto dry earth. Every morning before the sun had fully risen, he heard the same birdsong repeating endlessly as if the world had nothing new to offer. One morning, while turning the soil, he sighed, his voice tinged with frustration. "Master, I don't understand why you say gardening is a form of practice. All I feel is tired. I don't see any enlightenment here." Isamu looked up, his eyes catching the first rays of sunlight. They narrowed slightly, but still glowed with warmth. "Have you ever seen the sun rise in a hurry?" Teo blinked. "No, Master, but it rises every day, doesn't it?" "Yes, then why does it never have to try?" The question left Teo puzzled. He watched the sunlight slowly spreading across the ground. The master continued, his voice calm and low, "Because that is its nature. Meditation is the same. It doesn't come from effort, but from being natural. When your mind is fully present in what you are doing, that moment itself is meditation." Isamu dug his hoe into the soil, lifting a clump of roots. Beneath them, a tiny green sprout was growing. He pointed to it. "See, this weeds are like the habits in your mind. If you only cut what's above the surface without looking into the roots, they'll grow back even faster. It's like forcing yourself not to be angry or sad. Without seeing the fear beneath it, the anger and sadness will return, only wearing new shapes." Teo looked at the clump of soil in the master's hands, then at his own patch of ground. He realized that all this time he had been focused only on making the garden clean, forgetting to listen to the earth. Just like he had tried to achieve peace, forgetting to see the restless mind that sought it. He said nothing, only pressed his hands into the warm soil, feeling the morning sunlight seep into the earth. In that moment, he understood perhaps pulling weeds was not just cleaning the garden, but clearing his own heart. That noon, they rested beneath a large tree. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, scattering patches of gold on the ground. The air carried the damp scent of freshly watered soil, blending with the steady hum of cicadas, the endless song of summer. Teo looked at the garden, the neat rows of vegetables, the new flower beds, the soft soil, but still saw green dots of weeds here and there. He sighed. "No matter how much I pull, there's always more. Is my heart the same, Master? I meditate, I chant. I try to live kindly, but anger, worry, and fear always come back." Isamu smiled a slow, gentle smile that matched his breathing. Yes, Teo. Weeds are not the enemy of the earth. They remind us the soil is still alive, still fertile. If the earth were dead, nothing would grow. Likewise, your uncomfortable feelings are not wrong. They show you where your heart still has life, where something needs care. He picked up a fallen yellow leaf and turned it in his hand. The sunlight shone through it, revealing delicate veins like the threads of time. The Buddha taught, he continued, that the mind is like the earth containing every seed, good and bad. When you water the seeds of mindfulness, compassion, and patience, they grow into flowers. But if you neglect them, the weeds of ignorance take over. Practice is not about destroying it, it is about tending. Each day, notice water what is wholesome and even smile at what is not yet wholesome. Teo sat silently. The wind blew and the leaf slipped from the master's hand, spinning softly before landing at his feet. He bowed his head. Master, what should I do when I feel tired, when the weeds just keep coming back? Isamu looked up at the sky where white clouds drifted slowly, then turned to Teo with kind, steady eyes. Stop thinking you have to clear everything. Just tend to it. Each day, pull a little weed from your heart, then breathe. Like this garden, it doesn't need to be weedless to be beautiful. Its beauty is in the care, in the love you give to each stroke of the hoe, each drop of sweat. He paused, his voice softening like wind through leaves. Meditation is not about reaching somewhere. It is about knowing where you are. When you work, eat, breathe, or simply sit fully present, you are already practicing. Teo looked at the garden again, now bathed in warm sunlight. He realized nothing in this world needs to be perfect quickly. Each act of care is already part of awakening. And in the stillness of that noon, amid the scent of earth and the sound of cicadas, Teo felt his heart become as calm as a lake, the weeds still there, but the urge to remove them was gone. From that day, he no longer rushed his work. Every morning, Teo went to the garden early, when dew still clung to the leaves and sunlight first touched the soil. He began to notice what he had never seen before: the sound of dirt falling from the hoe, the rhythm of his breath between movements, the sweat running down his back and disappearing into the ground. Even when a small weed sprouted among the vegetables, he no longer saw it as an enemy. Instead of yanking it out, he knelt and observed. Some days he felt irritation rising when weeds covered the flower beds. Anger came like a brief hot wind. But then he stopped and smiled, realizing that anger itself was just another kind of weed growing in the mind. He pulled it out with a deep breath and returned to work in silence. That afternoon, Master Isamu passed by. He saw Teo kneeling by the vegetable rows, his hands covered in soil, but moving gently as if stroking each leaf. The last light of day fell across the boy's face, giving it a calm brightness rarely seen. The master approached and asked quietly, "What do you see today?" Teo looked up smiling. "I see the weeds growing slower, but my heart feels calmer." Isamu nodded his eyes, reflecting quiet joy. "Yes. When you stop fighting the weeds, you begin to understand them. And once you understand, they lose their power. The same with the mind. When you understand fear, it weakens. When you look directly at anger, it dissolves." He knelt beside Teo, pulling up a large clump of weeds. The soil loosened, revealing deep, tangled roots. Isamu spoke softly, his voice deep and warm like wind through the bamboo grove. You see, meditation isn't only sitting still in silence. It's also when you kneel to the earth, touching the present moment with your hands, your breath, your heart. Each patch of soil you clear is a patch of your own mind being cleared. Teo gazed at the garden before him, still with weeds, still imperfect, yet alive, breathing, and filled with himself. The weeds were no longer something to destroy. They were gentle reminders from the earth that true practice isn't about being finished, but about doing each act with a full heart. And in that moment, Teo understood the garden was peaceful, not because it was weedless, but because his mind was still. Practice, he realized, is the tending of the inner garden, pulling one habit at a time. Not to become perfect, but to see clearly the living nature within. That evening, as the sun dipped low, the garden glowed in a soft, honey-colored light. Teo sat quietly, watching the young plants sway in the breeze. He finally understood his teacher's words. True practice isn't something grand. It's doing small things with a clear and gentle heart. Master Isamu came near and said warmly, "Teo, do you know? People often try too hard to fix themselves, forgetting they first need to care for themselves. When you care, you don't judge. When you care, you are present. And in that presence, what is unwholesome naturally falls away." Teo bowed his head and smiled. In the golden light of dusk, they stood together in silence. The weeds still grew somewhere, but they were no longer enemies, just a natural part of the earth, like human weakness within the heart. A soft breeze carried the scent of jasmine newly bloomed. The master said, "Each person is the gardener of their own heart. No one can pull the weeds or water the soil for you. But no one can take away the flowers that bloom when you tend them long enough." As they left the garden, Teo turned back for one last look. He saw the green rows of vegetables speckled with small patches of grass. But instead of frustration, he smiled, knowing that the garden of the heart never needs to be perfect, only tended with mindfulness each day. Before they entered the temple, the master said quietly, "Tomorrow help Tenzin in the meditation hall. He's been struggling with a dusty mirror. The more he wipes, the blurrier it becomes. Watch carefully, and you might understand something new." Teo bowed deeply. Inside him, a small seed of patience had just begun to sprout. At dawn, mist still covered the old tiled roofs of the monastery. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the bamboo leaves, casting a soft golden veil across the meditation hall floor. In that stillness, a young novice named Lian stood before a large mirror, a soft cloth in his hand, carefully wiping it again and again. He had been cleaning for over an hour, yet the mirror remained dull. Thin layers of dust clung to the surface like mist, blurring his reflection, as if wrapped in fog. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead as Lian rubbed harder, his eyes tense, as though he were trying to erase something that didn't belong to him. Tenzin, the old Zen master, passed by and stopped. He watched in silence for a while, then asked in a calm, gentle tone filled with quiet depth, "What are you doing, Lian?" The boy bowed. "I'm cleaning the mirror, master, but the more I wipe, the duller it becomes. Maybe it's too old. Maybe it can't shine anymore." Tenzin stepped closer, running his fingers lightly over the cold, dusty glass. He asked softly, "Are you wiping to remove the dust or to see it?" Lian looked up puzzled. "Was there a difference, master?" Tenzin smiled a smile that seemed to reflect something far beyond the mirror itself. "Tomorrow," he said, "continue wiping, but do not try to make it shine." The words startled Lian. After Tenzin left, he stood before the mirror for a long time, staring at his blurred reflection. "Not try to make it shine," he thought. Isn't that the whole purpose of cleaning? That night, he couldn't sleep. The wind outside rustled through the bamboo, echoing the question that wouldn't leave his mind. Perhaps the reason the mirror stayed cloudy wasn't the dust itself, but the desire to make it clear. The next morning, Lian followed his master's instruction. He wiped the mirror again, but this time more slowly, gently. No longer scrubbing hard or chasing a result, just wiping, breathing, and continuing. Yet whenever he noticed a smudge, restlessness arose. Frustration crept in, and his hand would press harder, as if imperfection were an enemy that had to be erased. Tenzin appeared again and asked, "What do you see, Lian?" Lian wiped the sweat from his brow. "I see the dust is still there, master. No matter how hard I try, I can't make it completely clean." Tenzin nodded. "And while wiping, did you see yourself?" Lian froze. "No, master," he whispered. "I only saw the dust." The old monk's smile was kind but piercing. "That is why the mirror stays dull," he said. "Not because the dust is thick, but because your mind is busy judging it. You wipe to eliminate, not to understand. When the mind only sees flaws, it can no longer see the light." Lian stood silently. In that moment, he realized that while he had been fixated on the stains, he had forgotten his own reflection. Just like in life, when we see others only through their mistakes, their light fades. Not because they've lost it, but because our own perception is clouded by judgment. Sunlight angled through the window, touching the dull mirror. For the first time, Lian didn't try to make it shine. He simply looked. And in that quiet gaze, something flickered, as if stillness itself had begun to reflect. By evening, the meditation hall was bathed in warm copper light. The world seemed to breathe more slowly, every sound softening into silence. Tenzin sat beside the mirror, the last rays of sun resting on his calm face. The Buddha taught, he said, that the mind is like a clear mirror, but constant judgment covers it with dust. Each time we say, "This is wrong, that is bad," another layer forms. Over time, we mistake the dust for the world itself. Yet it is only our own mirror that has dimmed. Lian listened, his heart still. Then he asked quietly, "How do I make it clear again, master?" Tenzin closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with a peaceful gaze. Don't try to make your mind pure. Just notice when it's not. When you see without judging, without wanting to change or reach clarity, the mind naturally returns to its mirror-like nature. He lifted the cloth and gently wiped one stroke across the glass. The sunset glimmered not from effort, but from the ease of no expectation, awareness. Tenzin said is not to remove, but to see. When you truly see, what needs to fall away will fall. What needs to stay will stay. Like the breath, you don't control it, you just feel it. Lian looked at the mirror. The reflection wasn't perfect, but it was true. Inside him, a quiet space opened, still, transparent, peaceful. Perhaps that serenity was the brightness he had been seeking all along. In the days that followed, Lian continued cleaning the mirror, not to perfect it, but simply to be present. When a speck of dust appeared, he paused to observe. He didn't call it bad, nor did he rush to erase it. Strangely, the less he forced, the clearer the mirror became. Its brightness came not from resistance, but from complete presence in each motion. He realized that before he had wiped with a mind that wanted to conquer, to prove he could make the mirror pure, to make his heart enlightened. Now he wiped with awareness to simply be here, not to arrive anywhere. Each breath, each movement, each speck of dust became part of meditation itself. One morning, Tenzin entered the room. The mirror was luminous, reflecting his gentle face with clarity. He smiled and said, "You see, Lian, when you stop fighting the dust, you begin to see the sky." Lian's eyes glistened. "So the dust isn't an enemy," he said softly. "It just reminds me that I'm alive." Tenzin nodded. "Yes, anger, fear, sadness, desire, they're all dust. If you look just to erase them, they'll control you. But if you look to understand, they dissolve on their own. The mind is clear, not because the dust is gone, but because you've seen what dust truly is." From then on, whenever emotions arose, Lian didn't resist or deny them. He simply acknowledged, "This is anger. This is fear. This is longing." And with each moment of awareness, his heart felt lighter, like a mirror cleaned by the breath of mindfulness itself. One moonlit night, Lian sat before the same mirror. It no longer reflected just his face, but also the bamboo grove outside the open sky and the faint sparkle of stars. He bowed his head and whispered, "Master, I understand now. When I wanted the mirror to shine, I made it dull. When I simply looked, it became clear on its own." Tenzin smiled. "That is living in meditation. People think meditation means a perfectly still mind free of all thoughts. But true meditation is seeing every thought clearly without being swept away. The mirror is clear not because there is no dust, but because the dust no longer hides the light. Outside, the wind stirred the bamboo leaves. A single leaf fell, landing without a sound. Lian watched his heart as calm as still water. Tenzin rose and said, "Tomorrow go to the lake behind the temple. There's an old woman, Fumiko, searching for peace she cannot find. Now that you understand the mirror, you may help her see the water." Lian bowed. In the mirror, the moon reflected like two clear eyes, luminous and awake. He finally understood peace isn't a spotless mirror. It is the one who no longer fears the dust. And when the mind stops judging, the world returns to what it has always been: clear, whole, and enough. Early winter morning. Mist blanketed the Zen monastery in white. The lake behind the temple lay still as a vast mirror, reflecting a sky softened by haze, faint yet clear. Amid that quiet scene, Fumiko sat silently on the stone steps, her fingers moving slowly along a string of prayer beads. Her eyes seemed distant, searching for something beyond what they could see. She had been staying at the temple for nearly half a year. Every day she chanted sutras, meditated, recited the Buddha's name. Yet her mind remained tangled like a spool of thread with no visible end. The harder she tried, the more exhausted she became, as if she were swimming upstream in search of a source that had always been behind her. That morning when Master Join, the abbot, passed by and saw her sighing, he stopped and asked gently, "Fumiko, what are you chanting?" She replied, her voice weary, "I'm trying to find peace, Master, but the more I seek it, the more restless I feel. Perhaps my devotion isn't deep enough." Johan smiled, his eyes kind yet profound. Pointing toward the lake, he said, "Do you see the water there?" She nodded. "It is calm until you try to stir it. Peace is already here, but you're disturbing it with your wish to have it." His words were as light as air, yet they rippled through her heart. She looked down at the lake, where clouds drifted slowly, where small ripples came and went with the wind. For the first time, she stopped forcing herself to sit upright or to be calm. She simply breathed, and within that breath, she sensed something unexpected. Peace was not in stillness itself, but in the absence of the struggle to be still. In the mirror of the lake, she saw her reflection smiling softly, as if she had never been searching at all. The next morning, Yoan led her back to the lake. The rain had stopped overnight. The air smelled of wet leaves and soil. The water was so clear that tiny pebbles could be seen resting motionless at the bottom. The master bent down, picked up a small round stone, and gently tossed it into the lake. Concentric circles spread outward perfectly, even and endless. "What do you see?" he asked. "I see ripples," Fumiko answered. "And where is the water beneath the ripples?" "No," he said softly, still watching the waves expand. "The water is the ripples. But when you look only at the ripples, you forget the water." She fell silent. The words sounded simple, but they echoed through her heart like a distant bell. As the early light grew, the ripples faded, and the lake returned to stillness. "Your mind is the same." Yoan continued, his voice like a gentle breeze. "When you feel restless, it's not because peace has disappeared. You're simply watching the surface waves of your mind. When wind comes, water moves. When wind stops, water rests. Peace is not something to find, it's the nature of mind itself, only hidden by movement." Fumiko bowed her head. In her eyes, the water reflected the sky, the trees, and her own face distorted by small waves that hadn't yet vanished. She suddenly understood all her life. She had been like someone gazing into a lake, seeing only the movement, never the water itself. A soft breeze passed by, rippling the surface for a moment before it stilled again. In that moment, she realized peace is not the absence of wind. It is the capacity to hold both wind and water at once. That afternoon, the wind calmed completely. The lake mirrored the mountains and clouds like a vast sheet of glass. Yoan sat by the shore, fingers gently rolling a mala bead string. His voice was slow like an old tale. Once a man spent his whole life searching for peace. He climbed mountains, crossed seas, prayed and meditated without rest. One day he met the Buddha and asked, "How can I find peace?" The Buddha pointed to the water and said, "You don't need to create peace, only stop stirring it." Fumiko listened quietly. The master looked at her, his eyes kind and deep as autumn water. "Your mind is the same," he said. "When you fear, you try to push fear away. When you're sad, you try to erase sadness. Each time you struggle, you stir the water. Peace never leaves you. It's only hidden beneath the waves you create." She hesitated. "But if I do nothing, how can the mind be calm?" Joan smiled, his voice like wind brushing across the lake. "You don't need to do. You only need to see. See the wave without becoming it. See anger without turning into anger. See sorrow without being swept away. When you simply see, you are the water. When you try to end it, you become the wind." She sat in silence. The lake remained still. Golden light from the sunset fell like silk over its surface. For the first time, she realized that what she had been chasing, peace, was never found through controlling life or suppressing emotions, but through stopping, looking deeply, and recognizing that waves are only temporary forms of water. In the days that followed, she still came to the lake, but no longer to chant or pray. She simply sat quietly observing the water, the clouds, and her own thoughts flowing with each breath. Whenever an old sorrow surfaced, she didn't chase it away or sink into it. She whispered softly to herself, "This is a wave. The wave is also water." And gradually the sadness dissolved like ripples blending back into the still lake. One evening, a villager came to the temple, tears in his eyes. "I've lost someone I love," he said. "How can I find peace again?" Fumiko looked at the shimmering lake in the sunset and replied, "Don't try to find peace. Let the water move, but don't leave it. When the wave fades, you'll see the water never went anywhere." The man wept, and in his tears, Fumiko saw her younger self, once desperate, once lost in the storm of searching. Now she understood. Peace is not a reward for effort, but the grace of knowing when to stop. That evening, as Joan joined her by the lake, she said softly, "Master, I no longer seek peace, but I can feel it in every breath." He nodded, his eyes reflecting the golden light dissolving over the water. "That is when you are no longer the seeker, but one living with peace itself." Later on, a clear morning at the end of the season, the lake reflected the blue sky so perfectly that one could no longer tell what was reflection and what was real. Fumiko sat by the shore, watching clouds drift across a surface that didn't move. Joan approached quietly and said, "Do you see? When the lake is deep enough, the wind can only touch the surface. When the mind is wide enough, no wave can disturb its stillness." Fumiko bowed. "I understand now, Master. peace doesn't come from seeking it. It comes when I stop forgetting it. The master nodded. Yes. When you stop seeking, you see. When you stop trying, you are. Peace has never left you. You only wandered too far from yourself. She looked down at the water. For the first time, she saw her reflection clear, undistorted whole. A breeze passed by, carrying a few flower petals across the lake. They floated for a moment, then disappeared. But the water remained clear, still reflecting the sky. Joan watched and said softly, "One day when others come to you, tell them about this lake. Help them understand that peace is not in a place, but in perception. And when they see it, they will stop searching." Fumiko placed her palms together and exhaled deeply. In that breath, she seemed to dissolve into the space around her, as the lake dissolves into the sky. At that moment, she realized peace is not something attained, but something that was never lost. From afar, the temple bell rang. The sound rippled gently across the lake and faded into silence. The lake remained still, yet within her heart, another lake had appeared, boundless, borderless, endlessly clear. Peace doesn't come from seeking. It comes from realizing it was never gone. When the mind stops searching, the waves settle, and the lake reveals itself as you. Tonight, as you rest your mind within your breath, let this story continue to echo softly inside you. Like the lake after wind has passed, let the ripples fade, leaving only the quiet surface reflecting the sky. The peace you feel now is not something you've found, it is what has always been there. Let these teachings seep in slowly, like water soaking into earth, like moonlight sinking into mist. You don't need to grasp or remember. They will do their work silently, gently, faithfully, until one day you realize your mind has become clear as a mirror, still as a lake, and bright as moonlight on water. Allow yourself to be embraced by this stillness as the mountain holds the valley, as the sun keeps shining whether you notice it or not. Peace does not come from effort. It comes the moment you stop searching. With each breath, it is already here, and if tonight, even for a moment, your heart feels a little quieter, carry that stillness with you into your sleep, into tomorrow, into each step of your life. Thank you for being here with Buddhism Seeds, where seeds of awakening are planted through stillness and understanding. If you've found meaning in this journey, please subscribe, like, and share so more people can touch this peace within themselves, and leave a comment below. Share how you feel after listening so we can continue to grow together in wisdom and compassion. Now take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and allow yourself to rest deeply in that clear awareness. The well within you has never run dry. The source of peace has never left. Sleep peacefully in the arms of stillness and the breath of the present moment. Thank you, and may your night be truly serene.